All right, Rootz. Thank you so much for joining me. I was trying to see if I can see us live over there. All right. You know, dear herbalist family, I just really had a super fun interaction with my friend Rootz here. We are both part of a mastermind group that meets on Monday nights, and we were talking about, his day job, if you will. We all had a day job at one point or the other, and sometimes we love our day jobs, but sometimes it's not our dharma, it's not our passion, our purpose, it's not where we're going in life. And Rootz was sharing, how he was feeling about some things, and his energy was just bouncing off my screen. And I said, I put in the chat, I said, we have to talk. We have to go share the excitement that you have happening right now around this. So Rootz does tarot card readings. I've never had a tarot card reading. I don't know that much about it. So I thought I may as well interview him and ask him these questions with you guys. You can listen in. And I twisted his arm through virtual to ask him to make an offer for you if you haven't done it, or if you're a regular seasoned person. Rootz has been doing this for over 20 years. He's amazing. I watched him share in this group some of the information, and I was absolutely fascinated by it. So two things: he's going to have an offer. Stick with us till the end, because I told him that we get to talk first, and then he gets to decide what that offer is. And the second one is, I would love it if you left comments below, because this is new area for me. Have you had a tarot card reading, an angel card reading? What was your experience like? Would you recommend it? And if I go ahead and do it, we'll come back and we'll talk about my experience with it. But I'm not going to do it live because I'm totally chicken about that. But Rootz, thank you for indulging me, jumping from one Zoom to this Zoom right here. Can you tell me, start to educate me a little bit on the tarot?
Wow. So thank you. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. Beautiful jumping us in. I'm like, wow, you really created a space, an environment, right? You created the circle, the container for this conversation to be had. You really pulled for it, right? And God, what is tarot? Tarot comes back from a system that was originally considered a game, where we started to then understand our reality. Back in the 1600s, we created this game to kind of just play, just kind of like how regular playing cards were. And then it evolved, like all of our tools have evolved, right? To now the point where we can speak hundreds of miles away from each other and connecting with everyone else who's also perhaps hundreds of miles away from us. But it has evolved. This is originally a playing card game that we realized, oh, there's these symbolisms that are consistently carried throughout all these major cultures, right? We got the numbers 1 through 10. We've got the systems of elements, right? Earth, air, fire, and water. And then the emotional body, the physical body, the spiritual, the intellectual. All of these things are intertwined so that then we can kind of extrapolate whatever's actually going on within our reality. One of my favorite authors that some people have an issue with, not going into that, but it's called The Mirror of the Soul. He refers to tarot as a way to really see what is alive within a person and what's just there, so that they can then work with it, right? Because if you've got a blind spot and you're not seeing your blind spot, oh, well, this is the way to do it. And that's why I love tarot. It's why I've been doing it for 20 years. There was actually a time, and maybe we'll talk about it some other time, where I legitimately went off traveling with one deck of cards and just the clothes on my back. I was gone for about 6 months, and it was one of the craziest, most funnest experiences of my life. And it's actually where I got the nickname Influx. But again, that's a story for another time. We're talking about tarot today.
Yes, we are. When we were in our mastermind group, and it's these are all business people. They're not my herby friends. They're not necessarily people of the plant world, as Rootz and I call them. They're business people, and I do business coaching for a lot of wellness professionals to help them get their voice out, to get them, heard and prepare their digital marketing. So there's this logic side, and then there's all of this creativity and energetic side. And Rootz started talking about the room as people were entering. thing. And he was talking about, you said something about the number 11, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I see the number 11, 11, one or two times a day. My family texts each other around it. So there's symbolism about it. I know my sister and my niece know what it is. I'm not, crystal clear on that stuff, but I indulge with it. But the numbers, the symbols, the earth, wind, fire, and water all have relevance. Now, what energy were you picking up on the room, and how, can you tell us about that? What were you sharing as people were entering the room?
So it went from 9 to 10 and then 11, right? When it was at 9, we were at this kind of almost like every person was either expressing what was alive for them, like you, right? How powerfully poignant you were, and other people were doing very similarly. And then it got to the point of also the vulnerable side of somebody was sharing. And they were really getting their heart out about where they've been feeling blocked and stopped. And that's the power of masterminds, right? If you've never been a part of a mastermind, I just want to plug in, go get yourself into a mastermind. I'd say come join ours if you want to, because we love having people there. And there's plenty of them. There's hundreds. I've been in so many of them, but find the one that resonates. But when it was at 9, we literally were at this creation exploration. And then somebody walked in and it was 10, and the conversation itself dynamically shifted, which was the combination of completion. People were just being comfortable. They were like, yeah, I am this way. And I've called for this. I called this into my life, into my literal, this is what I need. This is how I want to grow. This is how I want to develop myself further. But I'm also just wow, this is where I am. No need to go anywhere, but this is where I am.
I am. Mm-hmm.
And it was so inspiring to me to witness people being okay, great. This is where I am, without it needing to be fixed, changed, or altered, but the willingness to call in what they knew that they still needed. Because the fun thing about 10 is that it goes back to 1, right? Because in tarot, it's only numbers 1 through 10, except for in the major arcana, and I can talk for hours on the whole journey of the Fool and the exploration of developing that for yourself. But then when it hit 11, right, it started to balance out. There was more people giving and taking, right? It was people really sharing okay, I see that you've been saying you want this. Great, here it is. And it was immediate. I was oh, okay, cool. She popped in and it started to happen. And you remember that there was our one friend who he said he wanted something, and 3 people quickly gave it to him. And it was right at 11. And I'm okay, cute. Yeah. And so when it finally got around for me to share it, I had to point it out. I was I'm not sure if anybody else paid attention to that, but please, let's go watch the recording, because it was amazing.
Wow. Yeah. And I had no idea what you're really referring to or talking to. And that's why it's I'm going to pull you out of this room and go ask you about it. So how does using the tarot help us to create? And the other word that we were using was clarity, because oftentimes we're scattered. We have lots of irons in the fire, if you will, many different focuses, many different, realms of who we are, whether it's wife, mother, business owner, we fit into all these different categories. And you believe that tarot encompasses all of those things and has solutions, answers, and guidance to direct and harmonize all of these parts of people. Can you give us more details on how that works?
First of all, that was just the most brilliant definition that I ever have heard in my entire life. Yes. Yes, in fact, I can. Because there's something to be said, right? If you're witnessing this frequency of 1111, right? If you're witnessing numbers coming up into your life consistently, some people, we call that synchronicity. We call them coincidences. First of all, I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in God incidences, because I believe God is in every single thing that ever happens, right?
Yes.
Period. And that's coming from the person who's super hippy dippy. I've got a different God over here, and I believe there are archetypes to help guide us. And that's what I believe that tarot also is. It is an archetypal tool to help guide us into this reflective state of ourself. The other fun thing that tarot brings forth for us is this like cosmic awareness of, well, I'd say easily ourself, but also of like, I'm not going to show these cards because they're very different. But this is like, this card is Page of Wands. And in the Page of Wands, it is a youthful female finding their passion in life. And like, really, where does it feel in my body to be excited, right? And if that doesn't feel right for me, I'm going to walk away from that person, that thing that I was just a part of that didn't feel good. I'm not going to be a part of that anymore because that's stifling my fire. And right. So these cards tend to bring up like a reminder that we get to, I mean, really just be with ourselves. How often are we told you can't be yourself? You have to go follow and do this thing that somebody else said at one point in time that this is what has to be done. And you're like, but girls just want to have fun. Like,
yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. My dad used to sing that, you know, play that song.
yeah.
I'm an 80s girl, so yeah, I don't even know if you know what that song is, but yeah.
Oh, I know who that song is. You not see some salt and pepper all up in here? Yes, I know that song.
Okay, all right, I know. So yeah, you know what? I want to come to that. You said you're not going to show those cards because there are different cards. So there is, I've heard of angel cards, tarot cards. There's lots of different authors, Doreen Virtue and Abraham Hicks. You know, some of these people have different kinds of cards. Can you give us some, like, what's the differences? Like, how is the tarot different than those? Okay, why are you laughing?
Okay, first of all, because to hear Doreen Virtue combined with Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks, and then it's just hilarious because I followed all these people. I love all these people. I mean, Doreen, she's went off. She went off on her she went down a very fun rabbit hole. Okay. And anybody who's interested, go look up her A to Z list. She absolutely espouses everything that she talked about for over 30 years in that A to Z list. So she's fascinating. So if I was to describe for simplistic state, I consider tarot air. I consider it very logical, very straightforward, very exacting, and very scientific, which is actually the reason why I like tarot. It's very, number based. It's very like, the numbers, the elements, right? So X, Y's, and then it's all across the board within it. And then oracle decks, which you didn't say earlier. You mentioned Doreen Virtue, you mentioned authors, and I'm going to bracket Abraham Hicks off to the side, and I'll talk about her in a second.
Okay.
Or them, sorry. And an oracle deck. So like I have this beautiful one right here. It's the Wild Unknown Archetypes deck. It's one of the only decks that's also a circle, and that's why I bought it, because I wanted a deck that was a circle. Now, the Archetypes deck do not follow a system. They do not follow any way of it. This is going to make sense. They might incorporate a variety of systems to help illustrate their message, versus tarot consistently follows roughly the exact same thing. When you look from one deck and it says 3 of Wands, it's probably going to mean the same thing as if you look at another deck with 3 of Wands.
Okay.
Versus like this Page of Wands, because I talked about it earlier, it's a different frequency because this styles into the higher angelic realms and talks about the different choirs of angels and stuff of that nature. So that's just not something I'm prepared to bring to an audience that isn't my audience. Am I willing to talk about it? 100,000-fold. I did it on my TikTok.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, this card came up that day. So present moment alignment, if you're interested in hearing about it, she's over there. Shameless plug. Shameless plug.
Oh, interesting. So there's different kinds of decks. And what else do I need to know? Because, I don't even know what questions to ask, as somebody who's entertaining this idea and, not familiar with it. Is it scary? Because, maybe it's a little bit, unnerving.
It can be unnerving, but it can also be a state for some people who've never been vocally open or expressive with another person. It's a vulnerable experience to say, wow, that thing you just said triggered me into thinking about this thing that happened over here 5, 10, 15 years ago when I was a child. That's not saying it happens every time,
Right.
but for those people who are really actively doing the work, it happens. And it's so powerful to then just be able to be that holding container space of just pure love for this person who is just like, perhaps for the first time getting to experience themselves or an area of themselves that they haven't been allowed to, or that they stopped and they stifled themselves. So that's my favorite space to hold somebody. And where do we go from here? So many times tarot card readers are perceived as they are fortune tellers.
That's kind of where I'm coming from.
And that is one of the biggest reasons as to why I stopped reading cards and why I've started to read cards, is because I am not a fortune teller. You are the only person who can ever make a choice in your life.
Yeah.
I can create guidance and offer wisdom to go along with your life. And I always state this: if you like what I bring to the table, take it. If you don't, leave it and never think about it again. It's one of my favorite Buddhist things that I ever learned at a Vipassana center. It's like, the practice is good. If you got something from the practice, yes. The fortune telling, and that's not my bag. I'm here to say the mirror of the soul. This is what it is. This is what's so. Another misnomer that you don't ever have to think about is you are not required to be gifted a deck, but if you would like to be gifted a deck, call out for it and it'll probably happen, because God loves to give his children exactly what he asks for, or she asks for. That's how I was given my first deck.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating.
12.
Wow.
So somebody tried to be like, "Ooh, God's not into it." I'm like, I'm sorry. I literally prayed for a way to communicate with people and a tool to help me understand reality. And I was given a deck of cards. So
Fascinating. So it seems that this brings awareness, but from what you said there, it also can bring about healing.
Awareness, healing, change, and it can also create, like, one of my other favorite ways to use it is, say I'm looking at going to Harvard or Yale, right? I'm going to bring a landmark distinction to this, but I could ask, what's the energy of going to Harvard and what is the energy of going to Yale, right? What lessons might I learn at each one? Does this really resonate? Does this feel like the energy that I want to work with? Or does this one feel the energy of what I want to work with, right? Mm-hmm. And I've done that style of reading for years. I usually pick about 3 cards to go into each stack, whatever is option A or B, and there could be C, D, E, F, and G, right? So once you get that high, it's kind of like, you don't even know what you want right now, okay? Calm down. And that's fine. Yeah. But it's a great way of, like, what is the energy of working with Susan, right? What is the energy of working with Bob? And, just realizing, like, recognizing, like, what kind of character people are. And it's an interesting way of exploring reality of, like, ooh, do I really see Bob in his playful manner? Do I see him as a Page of Wands or a Prince of Wands? Well, if the Prince of Wands then shows up in a reading when you're asking about what is the energy of Bob, like, oh, that makes sense why he's so childish and boyish sometimes, because he's just living into his dharma of right now.
Okay. A lot of words, some Greek in there for me. But that's okay. That's right. That's why I wanted to jump in here, because I wanted to explore this for other people. So I'm still on the fence. I'll be brutally honest. I don't know that I'm going to do it. Rootz and I are going to continue this conversation off screen and decide if I do it. We're going to pop back on here. I'm going to talk about my experience with this process, having a tarot card reading. I'm not going to do that live because Rootz explained that it's very personal and it's not something that he would even do and record it for me myself, but not to do for a group of people. And you said that maybe you're going to make an offer for folks if they wanted to have this experience as well. What are you thinking on that?
I'm really just present that now I just want to keep reading. That's all I want to do right now. And as a result, I tend to charge for $2 a minute, but for this group, I want to go ahead and just bring it into $1 a minute to sit with, and preferably 30 minutes or more, right? Because that way we're really able to first create the container and really be with each other. Let it know that you're in a safe space. When you go to a card reader, this is like going to therapy, but active therapy, not just like you sitting on a couch and the person being like, and how does that make you feel? Okay.
And what's a typical time frame? Can you do a reading in 30 minutes? Do you need 45, 60 minutes, or what? Tell us about the timing.
So there's people who come to me and they're just like, I want to ask a single question and that's all I want to know. And I don't want to even tell you a single thing about what's going on in my life.
Okay.
Had those readings and they're draining, actually. They're incredibly draining. Versus like the more story energy. Like I see this is the story that we're working through. You're wanting to know about this thing. We're going to work through it with clarifiers. We'll like what resonates for you. What is this bringing up for you? And then unpacking it, working it. So a typical reading can be anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. And some people, they bring more questions. They have more questions that they are like, oh, well, what about this area of my life? Or what about this area of my life? And so then we do that and we keep exploring. Now, I'm more hesitant. I would rather focus on one thing. We're going to focus on one area of the life at once. And then from there, creating another reading at another point. I think it's going to be the healthiest practice for me in moving forward.
So people could have a single reading 30 minutes and kind of get to know you, feel out this idea, and then ask some questions about that particular thing that they're working through. And then how are we gonna connect you with people that are interested? Do we want to put it in the comments, or
the easiest way to reach me is I am on Present Moment Alignment on all platforms, from Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter or TikTok. I'm not on Twitter. I don't tweet.
But do you have a link or something we can put in the comments below?
I do have a link. I'll go ahead and I'll send that over to you.
Okay, we can drop that in the comments below. That's probably the easiest way to find them. It'll be the first link in there. And then if we get a lot of interest, if there's a lot of people posting in there, I'll try to repost that link so you don't have to scroll through all the comments if we get a whole bunch of comments. But
you can pin it.
What was that?
I said you can pin it in Facebook now.
You can pin the link, or I know I can pin the video to the top of my page, but I didn't know I could pin
the comment. I think you can pin the comment.
Oh, I didn't know that. I will look into that.
Yeah,
that'd be great. I'm gonna learn something else. Boy, you're just gonna blow my mind. It's getting late and I need to go to bed. Stop the learning. All right. Any final thoughts on this? And then I think we'll wrap it up.
My biggest takeaway in life is the reminder that we choose every moment of the day, and that everything that shows up for us is for us. Even if it's a challenging thing, sometimes that's our biggest lessons, is the things that is actually incredibly challenging. And it helps us steer towards what we really want.
The things that show up are for us.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. There's no second guessing. If it showed up, it's there for a reason. Meet it, greet it, and walk through it.
And guess what? If it's not a table that you want to eat at, you don't have to stay there very long. You can recognize it and say, thank you so much for this experience. I am not interested in this. I appreciate you so much for showing me what I don't want. And that goes back into Abraham Hicks, and they talk a lot about polarity and, appreciating the contrast.
Okay. So wherever you're at, I hope you enjoyed this conversation about the tarot. If you're curious and you want to know more, like I am, feel free to find that link in the comments below and connect with Rootz. And thank you for indulging me, asking questions, learning more. And again, I invite you to comment and give me any thoughts about what you think of tarot, what your experience was, and help me make the decision if this is something that I want to check out, something that I'm curious about and want to learn more about. Thank you so much. We'll see you again next time. Thanks, Rootz.